Welcome to the podcast where together, every Monday, we explore hospitality in its very broadest sense. From culture and cooking, cocktails and coffee, nutrition and farming, politics and animal welfare, organic and sustainability, family and business, entrepreneurship, and much, much more. Come and learn with me, Mark Cribb, about where our food and our drink comes from, and the businesses and, more importantly, the human beings that thrive on where we decide to spend our time and our money. Sign up to our weekly newsletter at humansofhospitality.co.uk and hit subscribe on your podcast player of choice. We are diving deep into the wonderful world of restaurant kitchens in this week's episode. And watching this chef's career take off has been an inspiring experience for me, not least because Steve Groves started his culinary life working by the sea in Dorset, where we once shared a town and even a seafront some time ago. Now, if Steve's name doesn't ring an immediate bell, maybe the fact that he was the winner of MasterChef The Professionals will nudge your memory. It also gives you an idea of the exacting standards he works to and why Michel Roux Jr. snapped him up as a sous-chef to join the team at the Roux at Parliament Square. And for the last 6 years, Steve has been head chef at this prestigious restaurant, giving its French classical heritage a modern twist and impressing yet more judges, most recently at the Craft Guild's National Chef of the Year competition that Steve very impressively won. But as you'll hear, Steve is not one for blowing his own trumpet. He's more interested in developing the talent of his colleagues and making sure the whole team gels, and that they get to see their families at the weekends. Yes, every weekend. I hope my brigade are not listening too hard. And as it's nearly Christmas, he reveals what's replacing the traditional turkey on his festive dinner table. I very much hope you enjoy this week's conversation. Steve Groves, thank you so much for sparing the time to be on the podcast. Very much appreciated.
It's an absolute pleasure. Good to see you again.
And you, yeah. It's been a long, long time. I'll come back to that. But before I tell the story, can you just explain to people listening, where are we on planet Earth, Steve?
So we're at Roux at Parliament Square restaurant. We're just on Great George Street, just off of Parliament Square. So unfortunately, this day-to-day life here, it can be a bit challenging with protests, road closures, and obviously worse sometimes.
Yeah. No, I've just had to literally squeeze past a load of protesters outside. I'm not protesting about you, you'll be pleased to.
No.
But there's
not
police,
again anyway.
There's police out there and all sorts. So I've not seen you for many years. We did once upon a time share a town and share an industry. You were, I don't know, on competition. Was Urban Reef there when you were at Branksome Beach, do you remember? Or?
Yeah, it was for a bit. I think you must have been there for about a year while I was still down there.
So you were in a restaurant on the beach.
Yeah,
I was in a restaurant on the beach.
Quite far away down the beach though. So
it was all right. We were friends, not
exactly.
foes. So it's exciting to see you again. And I've sort of watched your career over the last decade, or longer ago than that, when we knew each other. So genuinely excited to kind of hear the story properly, because I've only seen snippets over the years. If you don't mind, I'm going to start with MasterChef, because where I know you from Bournemouth, most people are probably going to remember you from, was it 2009?
2009, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so that's quite a risk. I always think for anyone who's in the professional kind of side of the industry, that's got to be a higher risk strategy than just your average person rocking up from the street. Did it feel high risk, and what was it that motivated you to go and do it?
No, you're right, it is risk, and it was one of those things that I didn't really think about that too much until it was too late and I was there and committed. And I think initially it came about with my boss, Tristan, at Launceston Place at the time. Just kind of came into the kitchen, asked if anyone wanted to go on MasterChef, because they were sending emails out to kind of lots of the kind of restaurants and chefs at the time. My initial reaction was no, not really. Just because I thought, well, it wasn't something that really appealed to me. I didn't really want the kind of limelight. I enjoyed being a chef because I was kind of hidden away and didn't have to kind of deal with being centre of attention ultimately. And I don't know what happened. I was on a day off and I just kind of thought, well, maybe just give it a go, kind of push yourself, get yourself out there, and filled in the application online. It was just a form online. I filled it out. I think about 20 minutes later, one of the producers called and did a telephone interview. And it snowballed so quickly. I think did like a face-to-face on camera interview the next day, and
wow, fast.
Didn't hear anything for a few weeks. Then it's like you're on the show, and yeah, then you kind of committed to it, and you just got to kind of get on with it really. And I think I was working so many hours at the time, working kind of really hard. I was a chef de partie at Launceston Place, so kind of doing like 90 odd hours a week, and everything just kind of went by in a bit of a blur really. And then it was just kind of, next thing you know, you're there filming on your one day off, and you're just going through that process.
Yeah, that's how big's the commitment? I interviewed Michael Bremner, who won the Great British Menu. Do you know Michael?
Yeah.
And he said, luckily for him, at least he was self-employed, but he said the filming schedule was insane and it was a huge amount of time, but he had the flexibility. But did you...
And all the preparation beforehand as well.
Yeah, were you given time to do it at work, or was it literally your day off?
I mean, initially it was just kind of, because the filming starts kind of quite spread out because you're doing your heats and all the rest of it. So you'd kind of go in, you'd do a day, and then you go back a couple of days later, do another day, and then it'd be a few weeks before you went back. If it's a mystery bag kind of challenge, then you can't really practice for that anyway, so you can't really prepare when you're doing your own dishes, because you kind of get a bit of a brief of what to prepare for, what's going to come up. But I gave myself a rule at the beginning of never prepare for any round that you haven't already qualified for.
Okay.
So I just, I could do a little bit of practice. It was tough at the kitchen because there was never really time to kind of take some time out and practice a dish. And like I said, I was a chef's party. I wasn't kind of a senior chef there, so I couldn't really kind of just kind of take that time away. I had my kind of normal job to do there. And it wasn't like I could go in on my day off really, because the kitchen was tight. It was really small space, so you couldn't really kind of go in there and be pottering around. So I tried to practice a few bits at home when possible. Smooth.
Just drop the lid of a teapot in my tea. Steve's doing very well too, but not laugh too hard.
It's so it was difficult to prepare, but I mean the restaurant did support me. Tristan was very good in terms of advice and things like that.
Was he nervous on his reputation? Was it kind of like, look, don't let me down? Because he was, kind of...
I don't know, I didn't really get that. I mean, the one thing he did say is kind of, he didn't want to kind of give me too much guidance in terms of what I want to cook, because he didn't want to be in a position where if it did go wrong for me and I felt that he'd kind of push me in that direction and I'd kind of resent him for that. So I kind of respected that. But yeah, he kind of gave me a bit of guidance. He'd already done things like the Gordon Ramsay scholarship and done well in that. So it was that was really helpful, and I think I kind of had a big appreciation for that. As it started to get later in the competition, then the kind of filming day started getting closer and closer together, and obviously that rule of not preparing for any of the rounds you hadn't already kind of qualified for started to become more of a challenge, because it'd be kind of, you qualified for this round, now it's kind of 2 days later and you've got to go into it. But I think actually the way I was working, the intensity that I was working at the restaurant really helped me through the competition, because everything was just kind of done on instinct.
Yeah.
And just kind of drawing on the experience that I'd got. I felt like I was kind of not overthinking things, whereas I think a lot of the guys that had kind of come down had to stay in London for the kind of that period, probably sat in hotel rooms kind of researching and thinking about what they're going to cook and maybe second guessing themselves sometimes. So I didn't have time for that. So it was just getting there, cook the dishes as best you can, and
none of it goes out until the whole thing is filmed, or is it released as you go along? Or
no, it's there's a big gap between finishing filming and it going out. It's like 6 months.
Oh wow! You have to keep it to yourself.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's ridiculous because you get to the end of it and you won. So they're all like, "Great, we want to get your reaction on TV." I'm not one of these kind of overly exuberant people who's just kind of like jumping around on the tables or anything like that.
Yeah.
So they're like, well, call your mum, because they'd already filmed my mum as part of it earlier on. So call your mum, tell your mum you've won. So my mum, again, is not really kind of overly excitable. So, oh, that's great, Steve.
Yeah, congratulations.
Kind of it. And end that conversation. And then about 5 minutes later, they're like, right, call your mum back and tell her not to tell anyone, because, it's got to remain a secret for the next 6 months.
Yeah.
Now, I grew up in quite a small town in Essex, so I called my mum back. She's like, well, I've told your sisters.
Oh, really? In 5 minutes?
So that's 3 sisters. And then...
wow, so it's up to 500 people within an hour.
Yeah, it's just like trying to stop the fire from spreading.
Okay. Which you did you?
And try and contain it a bit, but it was it was all right in that sense. And then I just had to tell everyone else I'd lost. Everyone else that knew I was filming it, I just told them I lost, including Tristan, my boss. I told him I'd lost initially, because when I called him, he was in the kitchen. I knew he'd kind of not be able to keep a secret. So I told him when I saw him face to face. Told him not to tell anyone, but I think he did let the cat out of the bag to a couple of people.
Really? Okay, but it was never released as a problem from the TV's
No, well, I did get sent a bottle of wine and a letter warning me not to tell anyone. Wow. Just a reminder.
They sent the wine in advance.
It's just
okay. And is it as tense in the filming as? Oh, it's probably even more so, I suppose, than it actually looks on TV. Do they do that? You know, at the end where they kind of do that big pause before they announce it and kind of show you facial expressions. Is that real or?
That's
literally.
I mean, to be honest, that bit's worse in real life than it is on TV, because obviously everything's edited down on the TV. Right. So the waiting it's insane. Like I think it's probably a couple of hours of keeping us waiting. And I'm sure they've made the decision and they just kind of keep you there waiting because it's building that tension. You're kind of feeling more and more nervous. Then they make you obviously walk into the studio, make sure you're all kind of lined up in the right spots and get their camera angles all sorted and fixed. And then,
you don't know.
And then they start the filming bit, and then there's the whole kind of wait, or they might be like, we'll just do that bit again. And it takes ages, yeah.
And they don't put you out your misery. They literally
no, exactly.
put you through it over and over again.
Say that name at the end. That's it. You're just waiting.
So your name was called. How did you feel?
Yeah, I was over the moon. I mean, it's. I think, to be honest, MasterChef was really good for kind of self-confidence, things like that. I'd kind of gone on there really questioning whether I could kind of go through that process and win. So to kind of come out on top was a massive confidence boost.
Yeah.
And it kind of validated the kind of sacrifices I'd made kind of prior to that, and the decision to leave Bournemouth and come up to London.
Well, yeah, perfect segue. So unlike a lot of people, I suppose, who'd maybe come up in London and kind of work their way up, you'd already been at the top of your game, and you were head chef. I say top of your game, obviously a different kind of scenario.
Yeah.
But you'd gone from being a head chef, on the beach in Bournemouth. You were what, 24 was it at the time? You were young. You were kind of earning a reasonably decent wage, especially for Bournemouth.
Yeah.
Big decision. What made you decide to step so far back down the hierarchy, I suppose?
Well, I think the thing is, my career kind of had a bit of a strange start, essentially. I mean, I'd done well at college. I went to catering college. And initially, I wanted to be a fireman. I didn't even want to be a chef. I just kind of I went to catering college as something to fall back on. But really enjoyed it at catering college. Won Chef of the Year there. Was offered the best placement they had, which was in America. So I went out to there. Was supposed to be there for a year, but came back after 6 months because my father was ill. He was living in Bournemouth at the time, which is why I moved down to Bournemouth. So I moved down there to kind of spend some time with him before he passed away. And then I'd kind of, just kind of went off track a little bit, I think, with my career. I kind of worked in some kind of pretty average places down there. I mean, talking kind of wine bars and kind of lower level hotels. So I wasn't really kind of developing myself a great deal, and I still felt kind of, I could still cook and I could still kind of make nice food and all the rest of it. And got the job at Branksome Beach, which in that area at that time, I think it was one of the better places for sure. Went there as sous-chef initially, took over as head chef quite young, like you say, I think it's kind of 24. But at that point, I'd kind of been living beyond my means for a few years before that. So I'd kind of racked up a load of debt that I was kind of struggling to service in terms of kind of making repayments, all the rest of it, and then felt that I really couldn't afford to move up to London at that point. So taking the head chef job was almost kind of a case of, right, I need to clear this now before I could even think about going to London. And then at that time, I was really questioning whether being a chef was still what I wanted to do, because I'd felt I'd kind of missed out on those kind of early years of being in high-end kitchens and learning. Was kind of running a team of kind of 8 chefs myself, and felt that I'd hit a ceiling in Bournemouth, and I couldn't really see where I'd go from there. And I felt that I just needed to go learn again. Really, I just wanted to kind of start to get back to those kind of the higher level in the industry, and I'd kind of see other people succeeding and think I've kind of wasted my opportunity.
Even though you were, what a lot of chefs would have gone, head chef on a pretty decent seafront restaurant would have been okay, but you'd always wanted to be, I don't know, one of the best rather than just one of the also-rans.
I've always had a fear of being a really average chef, doing a really average job. And I've always just kind of wanted more. So I think, and I'm not saying that was an average job, that's quite disrespectful, I guess.
No, it was decent, but
I didn't feel like I could go any further. Yeah. So I just, the opportunity came. It was actually through one of our suppliers. I can't remember the name right now, but they were supplying us with some pork, but they were also supplying Tristan at Launceston Place. Tristan had just come from Petrus with Marcus Waring, so kind of 2-star background. It sounded really exciting what he was going to kind of be looking at doing. So I just said, well, do you know what? I'm now in a position where I could really afford to move to London. I don't know if you ever can, but it's I didn't have the debts. I'd cleared that. I'd sorted myself out in that sense, and I wanted to then come up to London and see what Tristan was doing. So I remember coming up to London for a trial shift. Turned up at the restaurant. At the time, he'd said no one was there. Tristan was still in bed when I called him. He's like, "Oh shit, is that meant to be today?" Yeah, I'm outside the restaurant.
Yeah, I've come a fair distance.
Spent a bit of time in Starbucks, I think, waiting for him to come to work, and then did the trial shift. It was tough. It was a different environment. It's a lot of kind of in Bournemouth. It was working with like really nice people, really friendly. It was such a kind of like it was just a bunch of friends really working together.
Life on the beach.
It was brilliant. Coming up to a kind of slightly more hostile environment was just kind of looking around thinking, okay, this is what I've got to do. But that was kind of the way I saw it. And I mean, Tristan said in the interview, he's like, look, I can only offer you chef de partie position. I think you'd be mad to take it because you're basically going to disappear for 6 months or more, and just have to really get your head down. And the salary is this, which was about half of what I was earning already. And like I said, he thought I'd be mad to take it, but I was just like, this is what I've got to do. I need to do it. So said let's go for it. Moved up to London, and the first few months were tough. It was really hard. I mean, people would be saying, calling chef in the kitchen and stuff like that. I'd be looking around. Just got to remember, I'm not chef anymore.
Yeah, I was going to say, what was the toughest bit? The kind of the hours and the culture shock, or just the fact that you weren't your own boss kind of running the show?
All of it, really. I mean, the life in Bournemouth was fantastic. Loads of friends, plenty of time off. Like, the hours were kind of pretty sociable. They were still tough, but as far as chef jobs go, we were quite lucky. I could walk along the beach in the morning to go to work. It was pretty.
You could see the sea from the pass there, I think, could you?
Yeah, look out over the pass, open restaurant,
same at
beach right
Reef,
outside.
See the sea from the pass. That's a big selling point. I always put in the adverts.
Although I did sometimes wake up and the sun would be shining, and I think, oh god,
you're going to get
to work. There's going to be a queue outside.
That is the downside. Yeah. You can see it, but you can't use it.
No, exactly. Yeah, it was quite depressing seeing everyone walk past you with their towels around their necks and you're going to work. But it's it was a fantastic life down there. And I think coming up to London, I didn't know anyone. Obviously, there's loads of people around, but it's quite a lonely place. Working lots more hours, probably double the amount of hours, aching everywhere. Just from being stood up all day, I think, was the kind of thing, because I hadn't been used to doing that. And obviously, like I say, just stepping away from everything, I'd go home, just feel thoroughly depressed, because you're going home, I say home, you're going back to a kind of room with nothing in it. And, it was quite depressing, kind of.
Because the hours are insane. I've had a few chefs who've come up and done stages. Like, you think, God, they like come up for 2 weeks and spend their holiday up here. Yeah. Literally, you don't see daylight. Exactly. In at 6 in the morning, exactly. Don't finish till
straight down
midnight.
In darkness, down to a basement kitchen, come out 1 o'clock in the morning. get a night bus home, sleep for a few hours, and
Yeah,
do it
every
again.
day. And were you learning a lot from a sort of cuisine perspective?
Yeah, loads. I mean, I'd come up and I'd never even seen a kind of a spuma gun or a kind of a lot of these techniques, sous vide. I'd never touched it, and so the learning was intense. But that's kind of that was the bit that really made it exciting. And you're surrounded by, it's not just kind of like Tristan or that. It's all the other chefs that have kind of worked in other starred places, and the standards just kind of completely different. It's the way of working is so much more, and you're just so much more focused on the food, whereas obviously being head chef somewhere, you're focusing on loads of other things like the financials and the rest of your team, and the training,
people management, being a psychologist.
Exactly that. So I was loving just kind of really just learning all these new techniques and working with kind of better quality ingredients and all of that. That bit was fantastic. And then obviously MasterChef came around quite quickly after that. And it all just kind of took off from there, really.
Yeah, that was a big jump then to go, into MasterChef. Like I say, considering, it was a lot of, you say it was decent food, but fish and chips and burgers and stuff like that on the beach, as well as some more a la carte stuff. But it was not much of a window then to go and be amongst the best. No,
but I think because I was learning at such a rate, I was just kind of like absorbing myself in loads of like new ideas and new techniques, and creatively, I kind of felt like incredibly inspired. So I think it was a good time to get on there and go and do it. And it was kind of, the program was kind of in its infancy in the professional MasterChef sense, because it was only season 2, and season 1 had been quite low key. It was like lunchtime or dinner time, on BBC 2, and then series 2 that I did was bumped up to prime time, so that became quite big, and obviously the exposure from it was huge.
So once it went out and you'd won, you still stayed working with Tristan. Were you sous chef by the time it went out, or was that part of the negotiations?
Yeah, well, it was, so initially I was supposed to go and work at Le Gavroche, because I obviously going on MasterChef for me was all about making a contact in Michel Roux Jr. And that's kind of that. I just kind of saw that as my in. I wanted to go and work at Le Gavroche. I knew kind of Derek from the previous season had gone to work at Le Gavroche. That was my goal. It was like
this is a goal from years ago, or from specifically when you went to say, yes, I'm going to do.
I'd always looked up to the Roux family as being the kind of the ones that have kind of created this amazing culture of food in this country, and kind of really kind of rejuvenated the kind of British dining scene. So I think all through college we were learning from their books. We were they were just the family you kind of looked up to in terms of who's the best in the industry ultimately. And you look at the chefs that have gone through their kitchens over the years, it's an impressive list. So that was my goal. And even Tristan, actually, who I was working for at the time, he'd been through Le Gavroche, and it just felt like all the kind of top chefs had been through that kitchen. So I wanted some of that action, really.
Who were some of the chefs who had been through? So.
They've been through that kitchen. I mean, you're talking kind of Gordon Ramsay, Marcus Waring, well, it's pretty much anyone that's anyone, really.
Yeah.
It's
not bad, is it? Raymond Block's the other place that I often hear that people have been through as well. So either worked with
exactly.
But yeah, impressive list.
So yeah, I wanted to do that. I couldn't go and work there until the show had aired, because it kind of gives it away who won if anyone found out. So yeah, I spoke to Michel Roux. Shortly after, he said, yeah, absolutely, you can have a job as soon as the show has aired. But then obviously I had a few month wait in the meantime. And in that time, I jumped up from chef de partie to junior sous chef, and then just as I was supposed to start at Le Gavroche, it was bumped up to senior sous chef. And to be honest, I felt as well that I should stay for a little bit, just because when I spoke about going to Le Gavroche, I could see the disappointment from Tristan, because and he'd supported me through it. So I kind of felt that, I owed them something to stay, and obviously they made me senior sous chef. So it was beneficial from both sides. I was still learning a lot as well. So yeah, I went in there stayed there as a senior sous chef, and then it was a year later that I came and spoke to Michel.
It's a good amount of time. That's a decent level of respect, I think, isn't it?
I think it was important as well. I think it was difficult, because I think once it did come out on TV, and there was a lot of kind of attention off of the back of it, which I wasn't really expecting. And obviously Tristan's trying to make a name for himself. He's just kind of started doing TV bits and all the rest of it, and is doing really well at the restaurant and kind of building a great reputation. And then suddenly he's got this kind of sous-chef that's got people coming into the restaurant and asking to see me. Does create a little bit of kind of uncomfortable situation. And I'm not kind of one that would go out and seek that kind of attention, which sounds ridiculous, obviously, when you've gone on and been on MasterChef. But
no, I get
it's...
you didn't do it for the fame, you did it for
I wasn't looking for that. So it was a bit uncomfortable at times. And there was a fair amount of kind of like ribbing in the kitchen. It was, but I just kept my head down.
Did that mean in the end he was grateful that you left? It must have made sense to go your separate ways a little bit from a...
I don't know if he was grateful I left. I think...
Probably not from a workload perspective, but...
No, because I think by the time I left, it had kind of died down a little bit anyway. But it's... I think the time was right. I think, I'd done my bit there. I'd really enjoyed it. I'd learned lots. And I think I'd been kind of, good worker for them.
Yeah. Is that when you did the stages? Because you ended up in, was it Buckingham Palace, the Ledbury, Noma? When was that?
Well, Buckingham Palace was actually when I was at college. So that was a kind of couple of weeks when I was at college. Right. Yeah, really young lad. That was
and Noma and the Ledbury and stuff, when were those? Were they?
Those were between, yeah. So, did a few weeks at Noma between kind of leaving Launceston Place and starting here. And then the Ledbury, I'd done a few kind of across a period of time, I think I went there kind of 3 times and separate stages. Initially, I wanted to go and work there after Launceston Place. That was the plan. Because, I'd decided that, maybe I wouldn't go to Le Gavroche at this point. I would go and look at the Ledbury because I just really loved the food that Brett Graham was doing there. I think it was the kind of food I really wanted to learn. I think it would kind of really take me on to another level. At that point, when I'd left Launceston Place, he didn't have a role at the time. So then I went to speak to Chef Michel, then came over to here as sous-chef, and then Brett called me about 2 days afterwards and said, I've got a role now at the Ledbury. But obviously at that point, I'd obviously committed to coming here. So, there's no looking back after that, really. It's been 9 years here and...
Yeah, good going. Well, we'll come into that. But for people who don't know, I realise we mentioned stages a couple of times, and although kind of in the industry, can you just explain what they are?
So stage is essentially going to work somewhere for free to gain some experience. And I think it's a great way of just getting in and having a look at what people are doing. I think there's, I'd say the stage in Noma, there was a lot of time spent picking herbs and thyme leaves individually picked off of the stems. So I'm not sure I learnt a huge amount, but obviously you've just got to try and look around as much as you can, ask loads of questions, and just, again, it was a restaurant at that time, it had literally just kind of become #1 restaurant in the world. So there's loads of people wanting to get in there as a stage just to kind of see what they're doing. And there's like an army of you kind of picking herbs and picking snails out the shells. And
I had a few of my chefs come up and do it, and you think, again, God, he'd be absolutely knackered when he came back. He'd come up sometimes, 2 weeks I think was the longest one he did for his, genuine holiday. And I felt, because he was knackered, he'd been working his ass off in my kitchen. He had absolutely pasting for the summer. Part of me wanted him to just go and sit on a beach and chill out and get some rest. But he would come back having not seen daylight for 2 weeks, and he'd be absolutely buzzing, excited, hundreds of photos on his phone, and so excited. But there's not many industries where people will go and do not just a normal week's work, but 2 weeks, 100-hour weeks. And it's still going on. In some ways, I love it. In some ways, I love the fact that people will open their kitchens and say, come in and work with me. And the other way, I think,
I do. Merciless. I still love it. If someone's coming to us just to literally have a look at what we're doing, I see that as a massive compliment as a chef, that someone wants to come and do that. So I will make sure that we look after them nicely. Just kind of really try and encourage them to see as much as possible, let them try as much as possible. And for me, as a younger chef, a lot of it was about the fact that I couldn't afford to go and eat in these restaurants. So the only way to really go and see what they're doing is to go and do that, to go and work for free and kind of see what they're doing. So I think there's a lot of that in there as well. So yeah, it's good for the experience, and I think it still happens.
Do you have a lot of people come here, and is there a sort of prerequisite before they come in? Or?
Yeah, we have a fair few. I think we would want them to be a kind of a chef, essentially.
Yeah.
Not just in case anyone just kind of come in and see what's going on. But so yeah, I mean, but I see it as a massive compliment to come in and spend their time.
Yeah, no, my head chef, I think, what a great job he did, because he was only going in as a commie fundamentally. He was just prepping vegetables and stuff like that. Yeah, he ran a kitchen, but he was respectful enough to understand why he was there, and he was doing it for the right reasons, and he organised them all himself. So I did, very much respect him for it.
Yeah, no, fair play.
You mentioned then this desire to get in front of Michel Roux and kind of their history and their dynasty, I suppose. So you must have been pretty excited to come here. But style of food that Michel's famous for, was that always kind of your style, and how would you describe it, and what have you changed your style and his, I suppose, in the last few years? Because I think he says even he cooks differently to what he did 15 years ago. So.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one, because I mean my training was very much based on kind of French classics, and that's what we kind of taught at college, and I think that kind of forms the foundation of a lot of the modern stuff anyway. So I think that was always kind of important. I think obviously Le Gavroche were doing those kind of French classics, but at the highest level. So yeah, his food, and the Gavroche food has evolved over the years. Obviously with Albert kind of stepping away and Michel kind of taking over. I think there's a kind of notable kind of shift in terms of catering for a more modern palate with kind of lighter dishes that are still kind of full of flavour. But then there's still always going to be some of the kind of real kind of robust, rich butter and cream laden dishes on there as well. And I think if you're going to go to the Gavroche, you want that. That's kind of, you go into a kind of French restaurant, that's what you want. I mean, in terms of here, when I first came in, I was sous-chef, so I wasn't actually cooking my own food as such, but the approach here has always been slightly different. It's always been a bit kind of, a bit more contemporary, I'd say. Bit less French almost. I think in the early days, my kind of cooking based on kind of Launceston Place was a lot more kind of English, and a lot more kind of British, trying to kind of reinvent British classics, things like that. Whereas actually in recent years, I've actually kind of thought we want to go back to a bit more of kind of tying it a bit closer to the kind of French roux style, but in our interpretation of it. So I think initially I don't want to go too close to the kind of Le Gavroche food, because I felt that we need to be our own restaurant, have our own identity, be very separate. Whereas, like I say, over the last few years, I've kind of looked back at more kind of traditional French stuff and revisited more of that. And I think there is a bit more of a leaning towards the classics kind of coming back through. And I think a lot of it is the classics are timeless. So the classics are a reason. So I think we kind of look more at that. I mean, there's still a kind of a lighter, more contemporary feel to the food, but I think it's quite fitting for this restaurant to have a kind of bit more of a French feel to the food.
Yeah, it's got a level of grandeur to it, I suppose, isn't it? So it feels, it demands a bit of decadence.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we refurbished a couple of years ago, and it's this is the one room we didn't refurbish. So you're looking around.
Well, no, that's nice. Yeah. I've got a similar colour in my house at home.
Yeah. It's so yeah, we wanted to make him feel more kind of luxurious, cozy, kind of like nice kind of plush furnishings, and a kind of real richness to it, which I kind of felt that was tying with the food a little bit better, because before it was quite beige, white, a little bit kind of clinical.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, I'm really happy with that.
Yeah. Well, you're only 100 metres from Westminster. There's a lot of history there, isn't it? It feels like a...
Yeah, exactly. I think it's just more in keeping with what it should be.
Yeah. So how long have you been head chef here?
6 years.
6 years.
Yeah.
And so you're Roux's on the door, I suppose. Do you have complete freedom to cook as you wish, or is there an element of the sort of the history and influence of Roux, I suppose?
Yeah, I think I've been here a long time, so I've earned a fair amount of trust from Michel and Albert as well, because they're both involved.
Yeah.
And I think initially there were kind of more restrictions on what needed to be on the menu or the way we needed to approach things. Whereas now it's a case that I'm trusted to run the food as I see fit. I think they know I'm not going to do anything kind of completely radical. I think my kind of ethos of using the best quality ingredients and just treating them simply and with respect, I think is kind of very much aligned with the way Chef Michel sees food.
And that, I guess, changing world of chefs. So you talk about your history being very sort of classical French trained, and I've certainly seen it over the years that, I don't know, let's see, it's the same in London, I suppose, but we seem to have a lot more cooks and a lot less patience, I suppose, is the thing in chefs. I've seen a lot of chefs who want to race through the kind of, up the ranks from commis to sous to head chef at speed without necessarily getting that traditional training. What's your thoughts on that? Is that a fair reflection, or is that kind of classic training still there?
I agree. I mean, there's been a lot of shifts in that sense, and I think back when, it's difficult for me to say, because obviously worked my way up to the head chef at 24 just because financially I needed to. But I completely think that I would have been better served really kind of, learning my trade at a lower level in a higher quality kitchen. However, things have turned out okay for me. I guess I'm kind of lucky in that sense. But I think it's really important to kind of properly learn your trade. But the way people learn now is different. I think, this generation have got part of it as well, but we've got so much information in our hands in terms of the internet, YouTube, things like that. We can learn so many different things so quickly. So I think, and with social media, you don't have to go into someone else's kitchen to see what they're doing. To learn kind of disciplines and all the rest of it, you do. And I think that there's a few chefs that can go through a very young age and succeed at a high level. I mean, you look at people like Tom Story and Ben Murphy at kind of young ages, head chefs, but they're doing it and doing really well. And they've also put in a lot of graft and hard work and put themselves in kind of really high-end places to learn. But they're exceptions. There's a lot of other chefs that will try and rush through, get to a head chef level, and then find that they haven't really got the kind of experience or the knowledge to make a real go of that. So I think it's really important to get those kind of foundations in place before taking on too much responsibility.
It feels like there's been a shift. So if the chefs get more respect now in many ways, I think, and I suppose shows like MasterChef have shown it, because I don't think people really, most people who weren't a chef didn't understand particularly that classic kind of French training, how much work went into it around, all the different sauces and all the kind of base stuff that you need to know. And I think it's certainly in the first sort of few years of MasterChef, it was an utter shock to people to go, oh my God, I had no idea it was so hard. Do you think they were sort of, pivotal in getting that respect for the industry a little bit more? Or?
Well, in terms of MasterChef, you mean?
Yeah.
I think, exposure to... I think everyone's more interested in food now. I think that's kind of a lot of it. And I think, again, that kind of access to so much information is not just for chefs. It's the home cook can now do a really competent job because they've got access to all these kind of recipes and techniques and all the rest of it at home. So anyone that's kind of got an interest in food can now kind of see what goes into creating kind of dishes. And I think that also has a knock-on effect in the sense that for us to exceed someone's expectations of what they can achieve at home in a restaurant, we have to go a bit further. It's, it's making sure that we're always sourcing stuff really well and we're getting the best quality ingredients that maybe people can't get at home. So I think, people just having more of an interest, and MasterChef obviously has been a kind of a big factor in that. And all the kind of, TV exposure and in other levels. It just means that people have been looking at the kind of chefing industry and or the restaurant industry and realising what goes into it.
Yeah, and I guess a little bit of kind of yin yang, and not to blame Gordon specifically, but I suppose on one side you've got people witnessing just the amount of work that goes into classic chef training. But on the flip side, you've got this perception of the industry of being a very shouty, angry, hot-headed, kind of challenging place. And I think the industry got a reputation, and a lot of people looking at it going, my God, I do not want to work in that. It's probably the same in the military, is that people don't want to go into a sector where they're just going to be shouted at and told what to do. Do you think the culture in kitchens has changed? Or?
I do, yeah, and I think it's important that it continues to do so. I think it's, there is still a bit of that goes on, for sure. Like it's never going to just change overnight. And I think, Gordon as an example, I think, yeah, he obviously is kind of very direct in what he wants and all the rest of it. But at the same time, you look at how long a lot of those people worked for him, so he can't be all that bad.
He seems to have met
those. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it's anything other than kind of extremely difficult to work in one of his restaurants, especially that period where they kind of filmed Boiling Point, and he was kind of really pushing for the 3 stars. It is a tough environment, but if people want to learn and develop, they're going to go to the best places they possibly can. But I think over the years, it has got better in terms of working conditions. I think chefs now, we start to understand that maybe you don't get the best out of people by working them kind of 100 hours a week. And looking at ways that we can improve that, and that's not an easy thing just to shift and just say, okay, we're going to double our workforce and everyone can do half the amount of hours, because that just doesn't work. All the restaurants would go under. You know full well yourself. It's
a huge challenge. Yeah.
You have to look at what you're doing and the way you're doing it, and it's something we had to look at here. We're fortunate that we're Monday to Friday restaurant, but we were still clocking up kind of 80-hour weeks in those 5 days. So trying to kind of reduce that down over like the last kind of 4 years, really. It's not without its challenges, and we have to kind of say, right, how are we going to do that? Because we were working with an a la carte menu, a lunch menu, plus the tasting menus. We were working off about 30 odd dishes, essentially. And obviously, the way I saw to kind of try and reduce the guys' hours down was just to kind of strip back what we offer, make sure we offer less dishes. So we work now with 15, 16 dishes, because we just do a kind of set, kind of prefix lunch menu, dinner menu, same menu, lunch and dinner. We don't change a weekly kind of lunch menu anymore. We keep that menu evolving nicely, but we try and kind of make sure that, we haven't got ultimately a really kind of high class a la carte menu and a kind of slightly inferior lunch menu. We just kind of make sure we keep it a kind of really good standard. Work on less dishes. The guys get to do less hours because we need less people in the kitchen at any one time. It keeps the wastage down a hell of a lot. Like I say, it just means that we're getting more out of the guys. The guys are more kind of motivated when they're coming in. They've got more kind of time away from the restaurant to think about food. Just stop and think, ultimately. I think that's the kind of thing. It's really important to have that kind of time and reflect on what you're doing and how you're organising yourself, and ideas for new dishes and things like that.
So are they all down to a 4-day week now? Is that?
Yeah, they're all down to 4-day week. And I think as well I used to hear a lot of talk about, we're going to a 4-day week when we're fully staffed. And
they never are.
They're never fully staffed. And it's just, you're never kind of, it's almost like an empty promise.
Yeah.
Whereas we've made sure we've got the structure in place here so that unless things go drastically wrong, the guys, again, I think there's probably been in the last few years, maybe 2 or 3 weeks where, we've had to ask the guys to do a bit extra.
That's good.
So I think, it's just making sure we've got that structure in place. We're, looking at the way we're working, we're looking at the way we organise ourselves, making ourselves more efficient ultimately.
Yeah. And no weekends, shut down for Christmas. You pretty much follow, not quite the Parliament's hours, otherwise you wouldn't be here now because we were just pre-election.
Look, Parliament does affect us, of course. So when Parliament go in recess in August, we close for 2 weeks.
Right, nice.
It allows us to clear some holiday. same at Christmas. We shut for 2 weeks, so the guys all get the kind of Christmas off.
Might come for a job soon.
Living the dream.
Yeah.
And then close of the weekends. Occasionally we're doing a private event or something like that at the weekends, but very few and far between those. So it's good. I mean, in terms of the way we treat the guys now, I think it's, we try and be fair. I'm not an angry kind of shouty, abusive chef anyway, but I want the guys to feel inspired. I want them to feel looked after. I want them to, feel like they're part of something. It's, quite an inclusive way that we try and kind of run it. I want the guys to come to me with ideas on, how we can constantly be improving ourselves. Yeah. Because, there's 10 people in that kitchen. They've all got kind of different backgrounds, different ideas, different experience. So, I'm always learning from them as much as anything. Yeah,
I think it's essential, and it is a good time for the industry in that way. And maybe the shortage of chefs was a necessity to make the industry change, and hopefully it will encourage, and some of these conversations hopefully encourage younger people to come in, because it's still an incredible industry, I think, isn't it? Although it's hard graft, it's still, not everybody's academic, is there? You don't need to come from an academic background. If you can rock up and just be in that, and the whole of hospitality, to be fair, not just in the kitchens, but ideally look someone in the eye, be a decent human being, have a work ethic, and you can, move fast through this industry and get, good experience.
Absolutely. And I think that's the kind of key thing. And even as a chef, it's kind of that desire to look after people and, just ultimately give good hospitality, give kind of, you're cooking for people, you're kind of giving something for enjoyment. I think that's the kind of most satisfying part about it, is when you kind of actually see that. Because as a chef, obviously, sometimes you don't see that, and you can kind of easily forget about it when you're stood there just kind of, peeling a sack of onions or doing some kind of monotonous job in the kitchen. That, ultimately, it's about that kind of guest experience. And where there is this bigger interest in the industry, we get so many more people now that will come in the kitchen and kind of talk to the chefs and all the rest of it, and that's great. We love doing like a kitchen tour at the end of the meal, and they'll come in and I'll kind of introduce them to all of the team, and they'll just kind of ask loads of questions and tell us what they enjoyed and all the rest of it, and that's great. I think that's good for the guys as well. I think
nice. It's always felt a bit ironic that we're in, the world of hospitality and front of house. You're looking after anniversaries and birthdays and whatever's going on. And I've always felt the pass as a fascinating place, because you've got the front of house team who are having to be in that kind of happy, jolly kind of party headspace, and then they come to the pass where all too often it's kind of like everything's to the minute perfection. That souffle is going to drop in the next 28 seconds. Get it off the pass and into the restaurant. And I thought there should just be a documentary of the clash of personalities, almost from a military style service back of house to a kind of like, oh, it's your birthday, have a lovely time. We've just been singing happy birthday front of house. But it's nice that, I think we're starting to get that better and recognise, if you're looking after human beings.
No, I think so. And I think, I've had it before where kind of, you can see the way and stuff sometimes coming in and looking miserable in the back. And I don't really think that they can just flip a switch, walk out into the room and be all smiles. And then next thing you know, you're getting a TripAdvisor review of like, this guy was miserable and serving me and all the rest of it. So I think it's important that actually that kind of motivated, kind of energised, positive kind of attitude and atmosphere is actually running through the whole kind of brigade. And as much as it's difficult to kind of maintain that 100% of the time, obviously, but just trying to make sure that it's always kind of everyone looking out for each other, front of house and back of house, so that it's not a case that it's all kind of false when you come out into the restaurant. Because ultimately, you want people that are genuinely hospitable, people 100%. That are not just kind of putting on a show. There always used to be these kind of smile, you're on stage things on the back of kitchen doors when you walk out into the dining room. It's like...
Go from sobbing to smiling in 2.5 meters.
You don't want that. You want people that genuinely kind of want to go out and engage in a conversation and offer people kind of good service.
I think people can tell that authenticity, can't they?
Yeah, exactly. So, it's got to be genuine. I think there's a big part about the way we recruit in the kitchen as well, is that I want people that are genuinely going to come in and be respectful of each other, are going to look out for each other, are going to work as part of a team to deliver something special. not that are going to come in with their own agenda to just kind of push their way through the ranks. And I want them to, I'd rather have someone that comes in with a good attitude, a desire to learn, a desire to evolve together, than someone with a massive ego and kind of, maybe a better CV or a stronger skill set.
And you do that. So, you don't firstly look at skills and ability to cook, and to test that, you bring them in, they do a whole day, is that right?
They spend a day with us, but that's not just testing their skills, that's also testing how they get on with everyone else.
Yeah.
And I will talk to the team about how someone has been throughout that day to see if they'll fit into the group and see if they'll kind of see how they settle in, see if they're asking people the right questions. Are they kind of are they showing an interest in what we're doing? Because it's not just about kind of coming in and showing me that you can slice an onion or make this sauce or that sauce or whatever. We can train people to do those kind of things. If they've got the right attitude, they've got a certain amount of dexterity and an ability to kind of, push when they need to. We can train them to do what we need them to do in terms of the food that we do here. It's more about how they kind of fit in to the team. And I think I feel that I owe that to the group that we've got in the kitchen to make sure we're getting the right people that are not going to come in and upset that balance. And I think as soon as you get a real negative influence in the kitchen, it can spread so quickly.
Same in a restaurant in general, I think, isn't it? You're only as good as your worst member of staff, basically.
You've
got to act quickly.
True.
There's a general perception out there at the moment of it being an unprecedentedly difficult time to get chefs, and I think I wonder if is it an illusion or the reality. We would imagine at your level that there'd be people knocking on the door all the time because you've got such a great reputation. There's so much opportunity to learn. But I worry a little bit around people's willingness now. I used to always say to people, look, it's not what you earn, it's what you learn. Go and learn some stuff. Have you got them queuing up to get into the kitchen, or is it a tough time even in your sector?
It is difficult, and it's the last few years have been tough. I think I never used to want to advertise jobs here as being Monday to Friday, just because I thought that that's going to attract people for the wrong reasons. So I never used to put that on the ads. I had to start probably last year. But, I mean, actually, I haven't had to advertise for a little while now. So kind of, touch wood, feel a bit fortunate in that sense. It's not necessarily that we've got people queuing up to get in, or I've got kind of CVs. I get a kind of steady flow of CVs coming through, I could say. But it's about kind of looking after the people you do have and trying to make sure we retain staff more than necessarily kind of keeping them coming through. I think that's the important thing, is trying to make sure that we're getting, like I say, the right people in, so the environment is a good environment to work in. B, making sure there's a route through the kitchen for people that are coming in, because I'd like to try and employ at the lowest level. Which for us is demi-chef to party. So I like to get people in at that level, build them up, let them go through the ranks. And I think if there's always that kind of incentive, that there's that clear kind of pathway through the kitchen to develop, to kind of, start to earn a bit more money, start to kind of get to take on a bit more responsibility. And that's really important for me. And I want people to kind of go through here and work and learn and go away as a kind of improved chef, so they can go on to work in a restaurant at a higher level and be comfortable in doing that. So I think, for me, as much as anything, it's about developing the guys that we've got.
Is there an opportunity once people are kind of in the Roux network of restaurants to go and work between the others as well? Do you get much crossover?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. That's something that they kind of wanted to do. Then, Chef Michel's in here kind of fairly regularly, so it's just a simple conversation. If they wanted to go across, then that's fantastic. It doesn't always happen that way. I mean, I guess to some degree, you've got people that come in once they've gone and got the Roux name on their CV. It's great, and then maybe we'll just do the one. But you'll get some that want to kind of stay within the group, and I think it's important as a group as well, that you kind of try and keep hold of your best people. And if that's the case that they've kind of moved across, then then so be it.
Yeah, sometimes I think people just need a change of location to keep them enthused, don't
Yeah,
they? So,
no,
which we'll
absolutely.
come on to. Actually brings us back to your story, because you've stayed here a long time, but also carried on winning awards. So one of the reasons that I'm sat here today is I saw only a couple of weeks ago, Chef of the Year, was it? What did that involve? What was it? Congratulations.
No, thank you. It was, so it was Craft Guild National Chef of the Year. So, I mean, it's a competition that I've always looked at and thought I'd really love to kind of enter that. I mean, you look at the people that have won it, have kind of talking to people like Mark Sargent, Gordon Ramsay, Russell Bateman, Alan Williams. I can't name all of them.
So that's not part of the test. You can't pass until you've listed them.
It's just an incredible list of chefs that have kind of have done it and won it, and it's kind of from my perspective, in terms of industry competition, it's the top one, I'd say, and in terms of especially my level of respect for it. I think it's up there. The judges are just an incredible list of, the who's who of.
Who were the judges this year?
There's a lot of judges.
Oh, was it?
I mean, in the semi-finals, you had people like James Napier, Matt Abbey from Hospital Road. Final, then you're talking kind of Claude Bossy, Claire Smith, Sat Baines, Gary Jones from Le Manoir is kind of the chair of judges. Although I believe that's changing for next year.
Right. I'm nervous just you listing those people. I can't imagine cooking lunch for them.
Incredible list of people that you're going to go and cook for. I think actually a lot of the interviews prior to the final taking place were kind of, how are you going to feel about cooking for all these judges?
Yeah, you're
just
not
like trying to ramp up the nerves. It's just like, well, you've put yourself forward for it. It is what it is. You just got to go in there and cook.
Yeah.
I'm not going to have time to worry about that.
You've always been pretty
ice
cool though, haven't you? You never come across as
I
massively
tend not
stressed.
to get kind of flustered or overawed by it. It's ultimately, if you're 2 hours to cook 3 courses, you're not really going to have time to worry about who you're cooking for. It's just get it done and get it on a plate. So yeah, I mean, it's a great competition. I think, like I said, I'd wanted to do it for years. I'd always looked at it. There'd always been a reason why I wouldn't do it, lack of time or something like that. So it'd always been, I'm not going to make it. And even this year, the deadline was fast approaching. And I'd said last year that I was like, I'm definitely going to enter next year. Deadline was fast approaching. I wasn't going to make it. So I just said to my wife, I was like, I'm not going to do it again this year. I've just not got time. Because we had a bit of staff turnover at the beginning of this year. They extended the deadline, and then I was like, right, this is my opportunity. It's a sign. I've got to go and do it. And just got the entry in, just pushed myself. I was like, because there's always the concern that I won't have time when the kind of semi-finals comes around to practice properly, or the final comes around that I won't have time to practice. I was like, just get the entry in. If you get through, then you're forced to do it. You can't not do it then.
Was there a sense of having, I don't know, one MasterChef that you're putting pressure on yourself? You're kind of putting yourself out there to be judged again. Do you think you got more to lose?
I don't know about that really. I mean, MasterChef was 10 years ago, so I kind of feel that's kind of subsided a bit or enough. That I don't really have to kind of worry about that.
Can't keep going out on that glory.
No, exactly. I don't have to worry about that as such. And I kind of feel like people might look from the outside and see me as a bit of a kind of serial competition chef, but it's not really the case. I mean, obviously I only did MasterChef
once a decade is probably not too
Yeah,
bad.
no, exactly. And obviously National Chef of the Year was only a kind of one-off thing as well. I didn't expect to win it first time, but obviously that was a massive result.
Yeah, amazing.
And yeah, I got the entry in. Semi-finals kind of rolled around. Had a really good day on the semi-finals. So won the heat on that. Feedback from the judges was really good. And then, the final came along, and I hadn't really had as much time to practice as I'd have liked. Was kind of basically I was going around, I was sulking a bit the weekend before and kind of telling everyone there's no way I'm going to win this. It's ridiculous. I haven't practiced enough. I haven't kind of tested my dishes enough. I've just not had the time to do it. I was the same for everyone. I mean,
you already knew what you were going to cook at that stage, did you?
Yeah, I knew what I was going to cook at that time, because we had a mentor day a few weeks before, where you kind of find out what you're going to cook or what you can cook with, what the brief is. But I only really started practicing the weekend before, because it was on the Tuesday. So Sunday was the first day I kind of really did the dishes properly.
Okay. I was going to say, at least you were head chef this time, so surely you could have given yourself a little bit more slack.
And we're shut on the weekends as well.
Yeah, but you were shut
so
on a Sunday anyway, so doing it at home.
Although, taking time away from the family is not something I do lightly.
Yeah.
So it's I didn't feel best prepared, shall we say? But actually, I think that probably benefited me in the final. And I think you can practice and practice and practice and have everything kind of timelined and say, right, I'm going to do this at this time. I'm going to have 10 minutes to do that, and I'm going to do this bit, and get everything so kind of regimented in the way you're going to work that when you turn up at an unfamiliar place to cook and then things don't quite go as you expected, or the oven doesn't quite work how you thought it would, or the induction hob's absolutely raging like it was. I've never seen anything so fierce in my life. I think if you've kind of so much practiced that timeline and you've almost kind of rehearsed a script or a play that you kind of just kind of dancing your way through, then you find it harder to adjust when things don't go your way.
Makes sense.
Whereas I hadn't really done that. I knew what I was going to go in there and cook. I knew what I wanted to achieve in terms of flavours, textures, and the overall dishes. That when things did go wrong, it was just kind of, okay, just use your experience, draw on that, and
cook from the heart,
just
not
keep
from the head.
just
Don't
keep
follow
going.
the formula, but
No,
tweak it.
exactly. And I mean, my dishes weren't without their flaws.
I was going to say, what did you make?
I did. We all had to do a bouillabaisse inspired dish for the first course, so I just did a really kind of quite classical kind of bouillabaisse sauce, just focused on packing loads of flavour in there. Did that with a piece of red mullet and a shellfish mousse on toast. I think you've also got to kind of be mindful of who you're cooking for in these things. Same with MasterChef and any competition really. Be mindful of who your judges are and think like, what will they appreciate? So
That's good advice.
kind of classical foundations is what a lot of these guys that are kind of top of their game have kind of based their works on really. So it's I wanted to kind of go down that road. In terms of main course, it was suckling pigs. Everyone had to do a suckling pig dish. And then I did that with trompet mushrooms, hazelnuts, and Jerusalem artichokes. And I mean, to be honest, that didn't actually go as I was planning, because I'd been practicing with slightly fatter, chunkier kind of Jerusalem artichokes. I turned up there, the artichokes were kind of super thin. I put them in the oven to kind of roast them before scooping the flesh out of the middle and kind of making a crushed artichoke. But because the quantity I'd ordered, it didn't yield very much artichoke to us. I was like, oh God, I'm really skimping here. So I was like, right, do a tiny little quenelle for the one for the picture, and then give more to the one that's going to go to the judges, and just make sure that one does go to the judges. So yeah, that was just all about kind of just packing in as much flavour as possible. And also my first, as soon as they said suckling pig, I was like, right, gotta get good crackling. And I think probably was the bit that kind of swung it in that sense was that you've got kind of good crackling on a piece of pork. It's a difficult thing not to like.
Yeah. Did not everybody do that then?
No, I think it's difficult to get good crackling on a piece of suckling pig in that amount of time.
Yeah.
Because ultimately you need to dry the skin out. And we just did that, but just using the time to the kind of maximum of just drying that pork belly out in the oven as soon as it kind of got in there, and then just kind of roasting it at the end and getting a kind of really good
and it came
puffed
together.
skin. So yeah, kind of
I was going to say it's a bit of luck.
worked out all right
planning.
in that sense. But yeah, my dessert was Calvados baba with poached pears and creme fraiche chantilly, and that was the bit that I messed up on it.
I read you weren't happy with that.
No, not at all. It was dense. It was. I hadn't mixed the yeast in properly and I hadn't kind of gone through the mix, and so I wasn't really getting the rise. And I was like, oh God, it's not rising. And then
You look a bit tense just telling the story.
Stressing me out, man. And then I was like, I told my commie, Damien, I was like, could you go and weigh out another recipe quickly, because if we get time, we're going to make it again.
Right.
But there was no time to do that. So it was just kind of case of bake them off. They were super dense and hard.
Really?
And just like, well, we just need to get them in this soaking liquor and almost kind of poaching them in that to try and soften them up. And
you didn't tell the judges this in advance,
no,
right?
No,
You just-
absolutely not. I did apologise afterwards, but as I mean, they said like, you know, the flavours were great. Yeah, it was a bit dense, but the flavours were great, and that's kind of why it kind of went all right. But after, I think things like that, you kind of look at it, you're writing yourself off because you're just thinking, well,
yeah, you've judged yourself.
So then you come out to the back and you speak to everyone else. Everyone's made mistakes. It's about who's kind of made the least mistakes, really, and who's kind of delivered the most flavour.
Nice. So how did it feel when you got told you'd won that? Was that as tense? They don't do the drum roll thing, do they? And drag it out.
No, it's a bit different. Obviously, you're up on stage in front of a load of people, but because of that, Barbara, I'm probably my own worst critic. So because of that, I was just like, no, you can't have won. Haven't won it. Thought maybe I would have come in top 3, hopefully. So when they read out kind of 3rd place, 2nd place, I was like, oh no, I didn't even make top 3. And yeah, it really did come as everyone's just like, oh, don't be silly, it didn't come as a surprise. We all knew you'd win it and all this stuff. Because I genuinely came as a massive surprise. And it was, it was quite emotional actually. I kind of felt properly choked up. And I think because the week before was a tough one to take, because I did a different competition that I didn't win, and I was it made me really kind of question myself and what I was doing. And I was just like, it also meant that I didn't have enough time to practice for National Chef, and I was like, oh no, I'm not going to do well on that one either. And like I said, I'd been sulking over the weekend and was getting a bit annoyed with myself, a bit frustrated. I was like, I don't want to be a chef anymore. I've had enough. I'm going to jack it all in. I don't want to do National Chef. I'm going to pull out.
Brilliant.
But then obviously to go there and then come out on top was, it was a big kind of
release. Your family must have been relieved. They had a happier.
Yeah, definitely.
Happier
I think, Dad's not sulking anymore. So it's, it was great. And obviously the support from family and the chefs and colleagues here is really kind of invaluable, and without them I couldn't do any of it. So it's
nice. You got any better at celebrating? Did you whoop and leap off the stage, or was it still pretty ice cool?
No, I didn't. I was trying not to cry, so I was just like
nice.
I was just literally trying to smile. It was a bit intense actually, with all the kind of cameras snapping and stuff like that, and then they want to get your initial reaction, so they're trying to kind of film stuff for social media and all the rest of it. So it's I had to kind of just compose myself. And it was quite funny actually, because in the evening we went to Claude Bossy for the kind of celebration of it all, and then they kind of thrust me into kind of making a speech, which I wasn't really prepared for actually. And again, then I don't know what it is. Just like I say, just the whole kind of the week that had gone before and all the rest of it, I just felt really emotional. Really? And then I kind of came and started kind of talking to some people, and someone I knew kind of said to me like, you didn't know you wanted to cry out there. It's just like, well,
yeah,
I did.
Well done. You held it together, just about. While we're talking specifically about dishes, and I'll come to an end in a minute, but this is going to go out just before Christmas, I think. 23rd, I think, is the Monday, so you are on a Christmas episode.
Okay,
so,
awesome.
Anything, you're off at Christmas, which is nice. Are you chef at home? Does your wife do the cooking? Who's the...
No, I tend to, especially at Christmas. I mean, a Sunday roast is my favourite thing to cook at home.
Is it?
Absolutely, yeah. I think, so Christmas dinner is just a kind of more elaborate version of that with more kind of vegetables and all the rest of it.
Treat when your day off for Christmas Day.
Yeah, exactly. But I love it. I really enjoy that kind of meal. And I just like everything in the middle of the table we can all share, and it's
family sharing style. So a couple of either a couple of tips or a couple of dishes that you particularly love at Christmas that aren't necessarily generic. So
I mean, I tend not to cook turkey, so I think trying to avoid dry turkey is probably don't use turkey. So we will probably get a lovely French chicken.
French chicken?
Yeah. So it's the French chickens are just really good.
Really? Why?
Yeah. Just the way they kind of the way they farm, they're kind of giving us time to kind of grow slowly and just develop really good flavour. I mean, we get better over here as well. Still don't kind of necessarily get quite the same flavour.
Do you know how many days they grow for?
I'm not sure.
Chickens is a thing for me. It drives me bonkers because we have 35 days. Don't even have time to grow any legs at 35 days.
Yeah, sure.
Industry norm, I think, is about 55. You get 76 once you get up, I think, free range or something, and then around 100 days seems to be the creme. But I don't know what the situation is in France. But we've been doing a lot of work ourselves trying to get the right balance, because it's I don't know, it's tricky. Food supply and the compromises that have been made. I've done a lot of podcasts interviewing, some of the farmers and stuff. And
there's some people doing some great stuff. I think.
Yeah, it's improving.
I listened to your podcast with the guys from Chalkstream, and that's something we use here, and it's just an incredible product. I think they really care about what they're doing. I think that's it's what you want as a chef or restaurateur, is you want to work with people that care as much as you do about.
At the end of the day, the joy of being a restaurateur or a chef, ideally, isn't it, is to find the very best produce, and really, what an honour it is just to represent all of those guys. You find the suppliers that put enough love into their product.
Yeah.
Don't take this the wrong way, but you don't need to do too much to them. Then
no, exactly.
It's all about showing off their product.
Don't mess around with it too much. I think that's as part of growing up as a chef. I think it's something you kind of learn is that if you're getting the best quality ingredients, you don't have to mask it.
Yeah,
it's just treat it with care.
Have a listen to a chap called Tom Foote from the Open Air Dairy, who I absolutely loved, who does that. He's got 860 cows in a field down in Devon.
Okay.
Who all they have a natural pecking order. So they actually milk them in the fields rather than taking them back to a barn.
Oh,
So
really?
they don't have any barn. Why it's called the Open Air Dairy. So all year round, these cows live outside eating grass.
Fantastic.
Natural pecking order as to who gets milked in what order. So the cows sort it out themselves. They have an amazing life, and he makes this beautiful cheese now. Cheddar Open Air Dairy cheddar. So worth checking out. But listen to the podcast.
I will have a look.
The most nervous I've been probably stood in a field with 860 cows being crushed between a Land Rover and a huge heifer. But if you tickle a cow behind the ear, they relax. So there's a
good stuff.
Tip for you.
Remember that.
And I know I didn't eat it, which was good. You seem happy. You've been here a long time. So given your success, and you must get, presumably with all of that, I don't know, certainly in the rest of the sector, and I was just chatting to Andrea from Mercato Metropolitan kind of markets, and he's got a really lovely product, but he constantly gets venture capitalists coming in who don't understand him and saying, look, we need to grow this, we need to roll it out, we need to develop it, and he's just not interested, because he's not interested in the kind of, I suppose, what the venture capitalists have done to hospitality, trying to turn it into a commodity rather than a genuine industry. Yeah. But you must get people kind of wanting to back you, presumably, if you have offers of opening your own restaurant. And what's your plans, thoughts, and dreams on that front?
No, not so many offers of opening my own place. So
unfortunately, it's been a tough couple of years, Steve. But if the podcast takes off, I'll be in touch.
I mean, to be honest, for me at the moment, I don't really want to open somewhere right now. I think it is a really tough time for the industry. It's really uncertain. I don't think the grass is necessarily always greener. I think I very much appreciate what I've got here. I've got the support of the Roux family, but also freedom to do my thing, and have my kind of creative output, and also kind of run the team in the way I see fit. And the support from restaurant associates who kind of they own the restaurant, and the support from them and all of that goes along with it is really good and important in kind of testing times that the industry is kind of facing at the moment. So, I mean, I'm happy here. I've always felt that there's kind of scope to grow. I've always felt that we can be better. I've always felt that kind of if I need it, the support is there to achieve that. I've seen a lot of people kind of go off and do this, that, and the other, and it's all well and good kind of saying, well, so and so owns this restaurant, and then 6 months later they're walking away from it, and it's like, well, didn't actually own it at all. It's just kind of put the name to it. It's just, I don't know. It always used to be the goal of just, I've got to get my own restaurant and do my own thing. But, I'm fortunate here. Like I said, I've got good work-life balance. I've got a young family who I don't want to be that chef that's just kind of completely abused that kind of family life and just been away all the time because I'm chasing this, that and the other at the restaurant, or working 100 hours a week trying to make my own restaurant a success and never see my kids. So I think, that is the most important thing for 100%. Me. But I don't see why it has to be a compromise of one or the other. I think there needs to be a way, and I need to create a way of making sure that both things work.
Yeah. No, that's good. I would definitely give it a few years. I think partly just because of the sector and the challenges that seem to be happening at the moment. But I think, when you've got young kids, you've got to make the most of it. You do see too many train wreck families in hospitality. It's a tough sector. So if you've got that balance at the moment, that's exciting. We were chatting before we started recording. We were saying about Mark Hicks, who I interviewed, who's opened a number of really successful restaurants. And even him, when I was asking, what advice do you give to somebody to open a restaurant now? And anybody, let alone somebody of your caliber and history who actually knows what they're doing. And his key bit of advice was, don't do it. And even personally, kind of looking at the industry and going, feels like the right time to sit back for a couple of years and just see what happens. But
exactly.
Why do you think the industry's going through such a tough time?
Numerous reasons. I think uncertainty with Brexit is.
You can sort that out. They come in here, don't they?
Not helping. I'm not sure they know what's going on any more than we do, to be honest. But it's I don't know. There's loads of kind of different challenges, but we need the economy to pick up a bit and people to get out and kind of spend more money. But it's also kind of saturated as well, especially in London. I think there's been so many restaurants opening, and it's kind of there is a staff shortage because there's so many restaurants popping up all the time, and it's harder for the kind of smaller independent restaurants to compete with the chains and all the rest of that. So
I was going to say, do you see that growth in the restaurants being at this end of the market, or more that kind of chain casual dining kind of sector?
I wouldn't say this. I'd say more casual. I mean, casual has become a really big thing. It's what a lot of people want. I think kind of as a restaurant like this, we don't ever want to go too casual, but we've had to become kind of a bit more casual, just to kind of people don't feel uncomfortable come into a restaurant like this. And I think it's that's a really important thing. But I think that again is down to the people that are in the room, kind of offering that service and making people feel comfortable.
A bit less formality.
Yeah, exactly. People, friendly and engaging.
How much is you said you do a set price lunch. How much is it?
Our lunch menu is £45.
Okay.
3 courses and then £59 for dinner. Also do a tasting menu alongside that. So we do a shorter tasting menu for £65 and a longer one for £89.
Amazing. Good value.
A bit of scope there, but
good produce is expensive, isn't it? And
exactly. Good people, good produce. I think that's what it comes down to. I mean, our costs have just been going up and up.
Yeah.
Especially again over the last couple of years with the kind of, I don't know, Brexit when it first kind of came about seemed to be a kind of good excuse to just whack the prices of everything up.
From a supply
and because of the saturated marketplace and having to try and remain competitive, we haven't really been able to pass that cost on to the guests. Yeah. So it's it's been challenging in that sense because, like I say, all of our costs have gone up.
Yeah.
But we try and keep the cost down as much as we can because we want it to be accessible. And I understand that our prices, they're not cheap, but I do think they're good value.
Yeah. Absolutely, and that's key, I think, isn't it? It is odd, some of the conversations I've had with suppliers with certain products that have gone up, and you're kind of like, hang on, this is a British product made in Britain. There's never been anywhere near you. I'm struggling to work out how that classic, because of Brexit, it's gone up 20%. You're like, hang on, exactly. just explain to me why that is the case.
I remember seeing an interview pretty much just after how Jason Afton was talking about Brexit proofing his restaurants by buying all the British products. And I was like, well, hang on a minute, it's all the British products that
that's weird,
seem to be rocketing up in price.
Yeah, like you say, bit of an excuse. So, okay, so I guess two things. One is anybody looking to get into the industry, and whether that's anything, I suppose, but specifically your area of strength, kitchens, and the key thing that I've loved watching your career develop was your just having the guts, I suppose, to make those compromises and to realise what you needed to do to take yourself to the next level. So I've always respected you for that. So hats off to you. So anybody else who's looking, because I still think it's an exciting industry, what do you say to a young chef? What advice do you give them if they want to get into this sector?
I think the key thing is be prepared for a lot of hard work. I think you're not going to achieve anything without going above and beyond. And I think, get into a kitchen where you really feel that you're going to be able to learn, people are going to spend time with you, helping you to develop, and stick around for a good amount of time as well. I don't think you can just go in somewhere for a year and learn enough. That's why I kind of, like to have that kind of level of progression here so that the guys can stick around for 2-3 years. I mean, I've had guys in here for kind of 4 or 5 years. And they're the ones that will come out the other side better off for it. Because they'll have a real kind of deep understanding of the kind of fundamentals, and that can take you a long way. I think getting that kind of real level of kind of solid cookery skills is key early doors. So yeah, don't keep just jumping from one place to the other, because you can have an incredible looking CV of kind of, I've done 1 year at 2-star, another year at 2-star, another year at 3-star, another year at 1-star. And just kind of essentially, I can look at that and probably think, well, they've probably just gone and done larder there, they've gone and done larder there, they've gone and done larder there, and not kind of work their way through a kitchen. I also like to see on someone's CV when it comes to me that someone has actually promoted that person. Everywhere I've worked, I've always been promoted, regardless of whether it was kind of from commis chef to chef de partie or sous-chef to head chef or whatever. I've always been promoted. And I think when I look at someone's CV, and if I see that they've never kind of been promoted anywhere, it's like, well, why has no one ever looked at you and thought you're worthy of kind of moving up to more? You've always kind of just jumped to the next place. So I think that's an important way to kind of look at building your CV, rather than just trying to get a list of kind of great names on it,
or jump in ship for 50p an hour every now and again, which happens exactly. All too often. We have it. It's like in Bournemouth. It's a summer season. We train people or keep them through the winter, and as soon as summer comes, it's like 50p here, £1 there. All of a sudden, half your brigade have disappeared to a place that's only going to be open for 10 weeks because they can get an extra £1 an hour, and then they're all going to come back in the winter when we try and look after the guys and keep the longer term, and it's frustrating because you can't
it's difficult.
And learn. It is about what you learn as well. Ultimately, absolutely unique. You can earn a decent wage, but you do need to see it through. There seems to be an impatience nowadays.
And I think, we want to pay people's best we can. We want to give everyone the best deal. We want our guys to feel looked after and all the rest of it. So, we'll always be looking at ways we can improve that. But it's finding those balances, isn't it? It's just, we've got to kind of make sure
it's a tight margin industry. At the end of the day, you've got to
keep the doors open, ultimately. So it's, from a restaurant like this, no one's making loads of money, that's for sure. It's about trying to kind of nurture that team and help them to develop, and just, like I say, give them the incentive to stay.
Yeah. And these might be related, but so you've done all sorts of different roles, different kitchens, seen all sorts. What's the most rewarding thing you do now? What's the bit that you still get a buzz out of and get the most excited when you wake up in the morning?
I mean, I think kind of seeing new dishes, but I think the main thing now is kind of seeing the younger chefs coming through and developing through the kitchen, and seeing them go off and do great things elsewhere. I think really in the last few years, the kind of people that have been through this kitchen and kind of starting to see them kind of popping up in really good restaurants elsewhere, which is really satisfying. And I think, just in our kitchen alone, just kind of watching them kind of develop from being someone that's kind of coming in quite nervous and kind of timid. That seems to be less of a thing nowadays.
They probably thought you were going to be terrifying, Steve, but they've realised that you're
too friendly,
softly spoken.
And then just watching them kind of develop confidence, and start to come to me with ideas, and just using initiative and going off and doing their own things. You start to think, actually, you're going to go off and be a real asset to someone else, or you're going to go away from here kind of ready to start running your own kitchen, start taking on management responsibilities and things like that. I think that's the thing that satisfies me more than anything, is just seeing people develop.
Nice. That's what happens when you've had kids. You turn into a big softie. So
exactly.
It becomes all about the human bit.
Everyone's dad.
Yeah. So if people want to sort of follow your adventure and your story, or to book in here, where's the best place to go? Sort of, your social or website, I guess, for reservations.
So my social is at Steve Grove Chef. That's on Twitter and Instagram. The restaurant is at Roux APS. Again, on both things. So there's link to the website on the social platforms.
Perfect. I'll put some links out on the website as well, humansofhospitality.co.uk, so that will go under the episode. Sort of place you need to book if you're turning up for lunch, or if you find yourself in the city, can you just sort of, pop in?
If Parliament's in recess, you're always guaranteed a table, but it's, it's ideally, best to book in beforehand.
Perfect.
But yeah.
Great. Well, look, thank you again so much for sparing the time. Congrats on what you've achieved.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
We'll keep in touch. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to this week's podcast. And remember that on the website humansofhospitality.co.uk, every week we put on some show notes and some links through to the various websites or social media that are mentioned. And we also do a nice little breakdown of that week's conversations into specific topics, so you can jump through the podcast and just listen to some of the highlights if you wish. If you've not done so already, if you could leave us a review on iTunes or one of the other podcast players of your choice, that would be hugely appreciated. Thank you so much, and we'll be out with another episode next Monday.